whole idea of the coaching part of things is actually something that's really useful. In most organizations, I think there's this thing called 70-20-10, whereby 10% is learning, 20% is coaching, 70% is on-the-job training. That gives a holistic learning environment for any individual to actually do the job that they're supposed to do. One thing that I feel that is really lacking in terms of education at this point in time is the fact that you finish your education and you get thrown into a working environment whereby you are tasked to perform duties. But then you may not have that coaching ability to actually go through that, or even to have that problem solving. I'm just wondering, is there any way like education could provide that kind of coaching as well, to be able to have that sustainability in terms of what you learn and how you practice what you have learned? So I think that's one point that I can maybe bring up across. The other point was really on the hopscotch ideology that you brought across, right? And I was just thinking a lot of it is a makeshift culture because of the situation that we are in at the point of time. But in today, the whole idea of everything being provided for you, isn't learning supposed to be a lot easier than it was before? And why is that such a big difference in how we learn in the past to adapt as opposed to what we are planning to learn in the future today? So it's just some of the thoughts I want to based on the discussions.
I find it quite funny that we're talking about the space and time to be creative, but we're talking about all the things we've got to do to be creative. And like the one thing, like we have apprenticeship models from the past, to your point. And one of the biggest scarcities I see is that like we have 70-20-10, but it is the time. Like time is the time to be creative, the time to find. So we talked about efficiency earlier. I feel like time to make connections, time to make mess. Time, like for me coming in, and I'm quite new to Singapore, I realize that what I miss is making mess. Like I can't make mess and paint in my flat because there's rules, and I can't make mess at work because work is not for that, and I can't walk without my shoes in very many places. And there are many, many wonderful things about Singapore, but if we're talking about education, maybe we actually need to do less, not more. It's just, I don't know, like, I don't know.
Yeah, I just want to add on to that. See, I think you got a nice point. With all the technology, things are changing. Judgment is matters. And that's not only for children, even for adults. As you go senior, there will be 10 consultants to give a view, but you have to take a call, there's a gut feel, right? But always I have, maybe I don't know, it's a bias. I thought the right brain and left brain activities. So there are empathy, creativity, emotional quotient, EQ. That comes, leaders are born or made, is inbuilt in some form. If I can't, somebody who is disabled, feel for them emotionally, not even mind, and then connect with them, so there is help. Can it be trained and groomed, the muscle memory, by putting them in a Buddhist home, and even that is one of the reasons why in school system, my daughter comes back and says, the teacher is hopeless, right? They don't create their interest. Some teachers are so good. They've been given the job but not done. And if I just empirically look back, people have studied with us at the college and schools, same education system, same curriculum, but some of us have gone this way, some of us have gone this way. So that's one question to but I think really very valuable. But if it is indeed can split and train and groom, we are solving a much, much bigger problem in terms of what we do. To you, one comment I felt was, I think beautiful, like what you said, in the digital space and what the work means, how you define the work. I think, like you said, look back to the past, it is all collaborative. That means you don't know what the problem is going to come. When the problem comes, you know how to solve it. In our terms, we say street smart. You've been groomed to be street smart, and that skills everywhere we are able to put it up. I think you're absolutely right. That's what is coming. But one area, again, you touched upon the point is, even with my daughters and whom I mentor, I see one thing I miss, even in the recruitment space, is the fire to live. I want to learn. See, You can take the horse to the water unless the seed is planted there. Then it blossoms. But how the art of planting the seed, the fire to believe, I want to do it and I want to succeed, which is another area where we all struggle as leaders.
Yeah.
Some spot motivation is good for a week, then it goes away. But if you are able to plant it, then they are able to build, they become a self-creator.
Yeah.
So these are a few comments that.
Indeed. I think that someone want to make a remark.
I have a thought that sort of links up to everything that I've heard tonight, and I'm particularly triggered by what you said with the less and the not more. Yeah. When I look at my notes here and the photos I took of the slides on the wall, I think that these behavioral traits for creativity that you mentioned, and then many of the meta-skills that were mentioned right now are actually acquired by play. So I feel that play is actually the factor that we are missing out on. And then what the gentleman said there is maybe learning has become more difficult now than it used to be. That is maybe related to the fact that there is now generally an absence of play.
Mm.
So I've been working for all my life with educational experiments, like a laboratory. And I've worked a lot in the social sphere. Now I work in corporate. And basically what I do is I reinstate play.
Mm.
And I'm not speaking about what is often called like serious play. The thought by itself, that play all of a sudden needs to be like serious. It unplays the playness of play. So I think honestly that meta skills and creativity, it's an overlapping field, and I think much of the solution is in play, which is by itself some kind of lawlessness and rulelessness within certain constraints, and it's from the tension field between the lawlessness and the constraints that people learn.
I'd love to share an experience that I had when I was very young. I mean, it's very interesting that we talk about promoting creativity, encouraging creativity. But I think that creativity was killed even before we started, because in primary school, in primary 1, I remember reading a chalkboard, sitting there, and then the Chinese teacher said, I want you to draw your hands, or write the hands or something like that. But I heard it wrongly, and I just traced my hands out. And then I had the parents outside all giggling, and then the Chinese teacher scolded me, and said, I asked you to write hands, the word Chinese, but not to trace your hands. So you see, you're chided for thinking out and doing something that was different. And then you tend to think, okay, I better listen, And then when I had children, and my child was in the preschool, a Canadian teacher was a guest speaker, and then she said, she was encouraging parents like us to let our children play. Because she said, when they were young, 1, 2 years old, couldn't hold the crayon and all, and then they were coloring all over the place, and you say, oh, so beautiful, so excellent, right? But then as soon as they started school, in nursery, and they do the same thing, and then the teacher will say, color inside the line.
Yes.
So then they start to learn conformity. And then that's where they learn to be compliant, and they have to be compliant because if they did anything outside of that, they don't get the grade, the A, that is much needed. And then it goes on. I have always been labeled as rebellious. So I could never climb, of course, the corporate ladder, and also, I tend to, question. And it is not very accepted.
Yeah.
It's not accepted. So there really is not the kind of environment, and even right now, because I was formerly with the Singapore Retailers Association as executive director, I questioned some of these programs, like the JCIT, and then the career conversion program, mentoring, coaching, but yet you must have a template of what they must do, the outcome and everything. So so much for creativity, because I think it's really difficult to put back what you have killed from a very, very early stage. And all these soft skills that you really learn from play, but yeah, you're right, we don't play anymore, the children don't play anymore, they're so serious, go to school. My nephew, who's actually only just 1 year and a half, they always sit down and learn lessons, Yeah, got exercise books some more. So it's very, very serious play now. So I really worry, and looking at it, it's very funny. We are just trying to put back something what we have been killing all the way and continuing to kill.
Okay.
So the interesting thing about play is that play requires trust and vulnerability. So in order to play, you have to be vulnerable, you have to take risks. And in order to be vulnerable and take risks, you have to trust, and you have to feel seen and safe in an environment. And so what you're both describing is a not feeling safe in the environment, that I have to do this. So very early you felt, I'm not feeling seen or understood or valued or respected in this space. So I'm not able to actually express who I am and be who I am, and I can't trust that I will be cared for in the way that I need to be. So I know that I need to then fit inside the box, even though my brain makes all these other connections and can see something different. And that didn't feel authentic and real to you. And so when we're thinking about the future of education or the future of work, and with AI and all of the new advanced technologies that are, we're on this revolution, we're in this room, what I hear is everybody's saying, well, how then do we have what is quintessentially human? What are those quintessential human skills that we need for the future of work or for education, or to be who we are? And so creativity and love, I would put it as, and I would put love as the trust, because if you felt loved in that environment, you would feel safe enough to be you, and then you would be safe enough to play and be who you are.
And safe enough not to be sacked for you doing something that is against the rule.
Exactly, but here's the interesting part about that, is what you're actually all talking about is that what we want for the future of humanity is people to be who they are and bring their unique skills. So what is that, what I call sparkle? What is that spark that makes you uniquely you? So that you can give that to the world and society, because the world would be better if you were you, rebellious and adventurous and exploratory and curious. And then you would actually, from a very early age, be able to do what it is that you need to do. So maybe that is the reason we haven't cured cancer, we haven't done those things, because what we actually do is we tell children, you need to be like this because this is what we need. But then we hold back what their gifts are, and then they get to be older, and then they think, I can't live like this anymore, and now I'm weird, and I've always never fit in. But that's not actually true. None of us actually fit in. We're all unique and different, and that's the beauty of it. And so when you talk about inclusivity, I think that is where, and I love that you have love there, because I think that's actually what it is, because love, when we actually have a community or an environment or a place where we feel loved, we feel heard, seen, valued, respected, understood. And so that is what we actually want, I think, what I'm hearing everybody wants for the future of humanity, and it comes from play.
I think it comes from play, but it is also time. Part of it's generations. We also, this whole idea of education, we've been talking about, then you do this, and then you do this, and then you take a coaching, and then you move into the workplace, and then you do this, and then you learn all these new skills, and then you have all these new things, and then race to the end, and then what about the bit at, what about the roles that we all have in share? We've all been talking about sharing knowledge. Play is just a way of sharing knowledge. Being a grandparent is a way of sharing knowledge. Coaching is a way of sharing knowledge. I feel like there's this idea that we have to be lifelong learners now. I'm like, I want to be a lifelong learner. I want to get to this bit where I get to play and do stuff and be a little bit crazy and be all those things. It's no different from what anyone else is saying. It's just
learning is play, then it's not about being a lifelong learner, it's about being a lifelong creative or curiosity.
So
Or
it
just
is
lifelong
language.
play. How do we
Maybe it's
play? And
language.
I think that the best learning that we all do in our whole lives, and this is, we relegate play to childhood and we say it's this kind of magical thing that happens. But the best play, learning happens best with play because it integrates within you and you're able to, and so I would just redefine that and say not lifelong learner, lifelong player.
Okay, and other than saying like maybe it's about extending it a little beyond
Yeah, I agree.
work and like I'm quite looking forward to being able to be as eccentric as I like and
You.
I think that it's all interesting topics, right? But I'm just trying to put perspective into who are we trying to address this education thing to. Are we talking about teaching people to be creative or teaching creatives? Because I think what we're talking about being able to play is really to expand the whole idea of creativity and how you expand your own creativity as a person who's in the creative business. But a lot of it is really about how do we get people who are not creative to understand creativity, right? And I think a lot of what the work here that's being done is to expand the scope of creativity or thinking in a creative sense to people who are not creative or who are not exposed to creativity so that they can understand the work that creatives are doing. And I do feel that that's also quite important as an aspect in order for us creatives to have a sustainable kind of work in the future.
Yeah, big to sorry, sister. Apologies coming across as the contrary. We're pretty born in this world already. This innate quality of human. It is getting suppressed, like she said, by the environment, by the society, by the parents, by the neighbors. It is all rule bound and also in Singapore in the past. The moment if you are, so that means in other words, remove the layers. There is a fog is covering them. There is a mud is covering them. You unleash that. You don't know there are Newtons are available, there are Einsteins available. We want them to comply to A, B, C, D, a government servant, 9 to 7, 9 to 10 job. That mentality will kill, including parents. When government, I'm involved in government a lot here, government has reduced the pressure on PSLE a lot. You know who is the culprit? The mother. I start comparing and say, they say no exam, first and second now. Today in Singapore, local system, one and first and second, no exam. No, then she will miss out in P6. I want to send tuitions, I want to do mock tests. We are killing. So this eye-opening session of these two, really I'm becoming emotional here. But the reality is, it is not for kids, it's for us. We have to learn to be truthfully who we are, like she said, being a human. So life is a play. It's not that lifelong play. Life is a play. I come into this world to play.
I totally understand. I totally understand where you're coming from, and I don't think it's just Singapore. I think globally it's like that, right? There are people who are creative, there are people who are not. And creativity, yes, you're right to say that it has been suppressed. But if it's suppressed, then how do we ignite that again, right? And if we can't ignite that, if we are just playing among ourselves as creatives, then we cannot really ignite that in the other people, and then they can't see it from our perspective, right? In the work that I do, I always try to involve my stakeholders, whether it's in the creative thinking process or an ideation process, so that they have a stake in whatever ideation that we come up with, and that they become an advocate for what we do, right? So that's also one form of play. Could be a serious play, but I think that's also play from their perspective, right? And we're just trying to bring that in. So I think what my point is really then who are we trying to address this discussion with or to, right? And how do we then strategically, I mean, whether are we talking about in each of the different platforms, drive it in such a way that there could be a harmonizing platform for both creatives and non-creatives to actually work in harmony. I think that's my perspective.
I think if I don't, if it's okay, if I just share. I think the problem I have is that I agree that part of the problem is we're trying to have too many definitions, and my big bugbear in Singapore, frameworks. We are obsessed with measuring and frameworkizing everything, and that is the problem, that if we want to unleash, I believe every single person in Singapore is creative. If you see the recent study that came out, Singaporean 15-year-olds are the most creative, apparently, in the world, but they do not believe they are, and that's what I encounter when I work with Singaporeans of every age. I work with children as young as 5 and seniors well in their 80s. They co-design. All of them are creative, but we have to let them believe it. And I think the problem we face is the bloody obsession with measuring a tangible output, defining it. Are you creative or are you creative? Are you both? And I think if we want to get to that next stage, we have to ditch that way of thinking. It got us where we are, it won't get us to the next phase. And a super quick example on the love of learning. My son has been through the local school system. He's currently in P4, not P4, he's in secondary 4. When he was in primary 1, in fact, first year, when he was in K1, I had a birthday party for him, invited all the children in class. 3 kids turned up, and I was like, my poor baby, he's so unpopular. One of the mums says, no, they're all in tuition. And I said, well, what, they're 5, it's his 5th birthday. She went, they need to get him the best schools. And I was like, oh my God, that was so depressing for me. Coming to primary 1, he'd only been there for a few months, the teacher called me in and said, she said, I need to talk to you about your son, he's falling behind in class. And I was like, what? He's only just started P1. She said, yes, the trouble is I have 30 children in class. All of them, apart from him, go to tuition every day. He's holding up the class, I'm having to teach him. The rest are already taught in tuition centres. So I know we work. Is there someone else who could take him to tuition? And I said, you're missing the point. And this is the lecture I gave her, and I believe in it still today. I said, my little boy goes to school, and he listens to what you're saying, and he practices it, and then he comes home and he plays. And he invents, what an incredible inventor. When he was 5 years old, he invented an anti-theft device for his scooter using a pop gun, rubber bands and string, and it worked. He rolled the scooter, bam, the gun fired. Whoa, he wasn't taught how to do that. He didn't follow a checklist. He made it up. He played. Another time, he unscrewed his wardrobe doors, a nightmare. We were renting a property, we never got him to hang again. He created some structure so no one could break into the 18th floor of our apartment. Yeah. It was a phenomenal design. He didn't do brilliantly in PSLE, but he passed, thank God, that's all I care. But he had a childhood, because we had the bravery to push against the system. Most Singaporean parents cannot do that. They can't. So when we tackle this, it does require helping parents to trust the uncertainty, because the future requires us to have the ability to respond to what's emerging. And I fight this every day as I train public servants. They expect predictability in a world that is unpredictable. So if we want to get there, we've got to be the brave ones, rip up the frameworks and say, I cannot define this and I cannot measure it. I want you to give into it and feel your way through. That will be our breakthrough, but it requires a lot.
I think frameworks are okay, but they're just tools.
You get obsessed.
Like, I think it's more like if you start to use a framework as an output, then it's a problem. But if you use a framework to help you think, it's a tool and a toolkit.
I think it doesn't help people think though. I think what we teach people to do is follow the Lego instruction. Right. We need to teach them how to let go of the framework, because at a point of mastery you don't need it. So if you've watched the Lego movie, I feel we train people to follow the instructions with the IKEA manual. We don't encourage people to learn how to build freestyle. They're not the serious Lego play, right? And I think that's, so we've stripped frameworks deliberately out of what we're doing, not because we don't have them hidden, the frameworks are hidden in the background, but when we're teaching learning, we don't bring that part in because people just tick the box. How many interviews? Tick, 5 done. They're not thinking about how they found the pattern in the data.
I'm curious now how all this would bring us back to the topics that the speakers have brought to us. So what is your take on what you hear, and how do you combine this with the topic that you have brought? Because I feel
thank you for moderating.
Some profound. Yeah, I'm sorry. I feel
good.
I feel there is some profound, on a profound layer, a connection between the conversation taking place here and the two sides of the topic that you have brought forward. So what would be your take on that? How do you see this connection?
I mean, if I may just give it a shot, I mean, I love the energy of this discussion because, I came for this, right, is to have a discourse or a dialogue, whatever you call it, because we never really have such conversations, to be honest, in the diversity of views that we have. So that's a good starting point. I think Leonard has been asking a question 2 times, like, who's this for, right? Actually, part of when we started I'm going to speak from the DAC perspective, if I may, is that when we started it, right, we realized that the kind of education, and this is not a critique of education in a sense, because we were really focusing on design education, how we sort of get the kids ramped up, ready to get a job in the industry, right, is that we realized that, well, for the past 50 years, fantastic, you've done a great job, right? But going forward, if we were to continue in this way, we are really worried. That's why in the report, we actually identified what we call burning platforms. One is the digitalization of the economy, right, of the world for that matter, right? And there are others as well, which I alluded to in terms of the shifting of the jobs. So this is with the awareness that we want to drive in all the IHLs, right, and also in the industry as well. How do we really start to fundamentally address this? The committee is not responsibility is not to go into identifying what pedagogy, how do you teach the kids, but we want to raise this as a topic, as what we are doing right now, so that then the respective stakeholders will really bring it back. Because again, back to this, right, we ended up in this report here to say that it requires a movement. It's very much like what Nev talked about, revolutionary. It has to be a movement. I think this is almost like, that rallying where everybody has a very good point here, and somehow play became a common, and sorry for triggering this with the black and white photo, right? But I think that's fundamental, as in that I think so far, and my view would be that this whole learning thing that we see in Singapore, and let's use Singapore as a context, right, for the discussion, is that there's too much, in my view, there's too much of an economic lean in learning, where in Singapore is concerned. Rescaling, upscaling, I don't know, all this is, you hear this, it's because we want to contribute to the economy. Maybe the intention is good, but somehow, it just takes away that it's like, what? I thought I just left school, right? I want to enjoy the rewards of after studying 20 years, after getting a master's, I want to get high pay, things like, now you ask me to go to school again. So how do we sort of change that narrative, maybe, right? That's one thing. The other is fundamentally is to address how again, not just throwing this to the schools, but at every level, like you say, starting with the parent and everybody else, including individual. And that's why I thought I shared the paradox of learning and solving, or leaving, maybe, right? That it got to, maybe we got to start this as a movement and not necessarily confined in what Nev is trying to start as a Metaskills school or DAC's activities, right? I hope this evening, after that, you all could bring into your own organization or bring into your spheres of influence, right, the thoughts and the views that you have expressed, and spread it. This is what we need. Again, we can't rely on one particular entity in Singapore to say, you be responsible, right? We've identified there's not enough play. Please, Ministry of what? Ministry of Play, no. To take care of it, right? No. So I think that's also, as a first generation Singaporean, if I may, right, I think there's also, we need to reshape our own mind, and I completely agree with Tamsin that we are obsessed with framework, we are obsessed with, give me the 3-step thing so that I can follow,
We should probably check with if he's still starting the School of Management. Are you still starting, or are you starting the School of Play?
It's Metaskills.
So that's my view of how I will assimilate this evening's conversation. I love it. I mean, I came for this. I was just sharing with Nev, and the reason I signed up for it is that I miss informal sessions where everybody sit together, are free to share a view, right? It could be something common, it can be controversial, you can have a difference of opinion, but that, in my view, this is play. This is play.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, we are sort of sparring and we don't know what we're going to end up with. I mean, I don't know, are we playing hopscotch? Are we playing, I don't know what, but that's, I think that's the kind of environment that we should build.
I mean, it's ideal, but at the end of the day, the decision making, the people in power making thinking, oh, eventually, you can have some movement of some sort, but is it going to move anywhere? And how do you go about it?
Yeah.
Just for that, I'm just completely talking opposite because I'm 20 years in Singapore government. Government does lot more. The problem is, that's what I want to ask you. See, for example, they arrive with the PSL, I'm talking about local system. My daughter now in P6, she got iPad. There's a lot of creativity there. But the teachers are old school. The problem is the transition when it happens, the new system government is doing, but they can't throw the people out. That's what. Parents, because we are very small, 3.5 million population, 60,000 students are coming every year into the workforce. Now, how do I give employment? Because I don't have anybody else. Companies can disappear from here, right? We don't even want. So there is a chicken and situation in terms of streaming. We stop now. We are doing. Government is doing all more. The culture has changed. For LKY, it took 30 years to change from third world to first world. So maybe the many LKYs are sitting here, but we all have to. It's going to be a transition, but there is going to be suffocation as parents that it's not changing overnight.
Yeah.
That is where the frustration. Like he's talking about education. There is a Montessori education. My kids are gone, but it's not in government. Montessori education from age 2 to 6 together, they learn everything else by doing it. Very valuable, but we can't put it here because we don't know what is PSLE 6 equivalent there. Then what happens? Then how do they compete in the global market, etc., etc. And companies will disappear, including my company. We have a 60 million, 87,000 employees, but nothing. We don't buy or sell anything here. We are here because we get talent and look. Tomorrow I don't talent, we'll pack the bags.
Yeah.
So there is a serious issue from the government also because they need to feel for the industry and who are coming here. So they look at the biotechnology, huge innovation. She was talking about. I didn't know that Singapore is in the world's recorder. We are among the first single digit. We do a lot of innovation, and we are importing foreign talent, right? So they are trying to do whatever we can do to bring it up. But now wearing a parent's cap, we feel it should be much more faster. It should be like US, Canada. But they have big country, big region with natural resources. We don't have. I just want to bring the balance because otherwise, what else we can do? We had a discussion with the education minister. But he says, tell me what solution.
I would like to talk as a parent. We are a homeschooling family. My kids never went to school. They are 9 and 10 sitting in the room. So our reason to homeschool was the same because I realized that it's not worth sitting in the classroom for 8 hours, which I can teach them in 1 hour. So, and thankfully Singapore is a place where you can take the kids outside whole day, like weather-wise or anything. It worked for us. So till grade 5, we never touched any curriculum. We did Montessori, we did Waldorf, whatever we liked. This was like, nobody was monitoring us. Now we are Indians, we have to go. The problem which as a parent, though I'm so open-minded and I do not believe in this education, like in the sense that you don't need 8 hours to sit there. This is not, you 2 hours you're done with the schoolwork. What my problem which I'm facing as a couple also, that once they have to enter the college, they need the certificates. They need this many percentage to even appear for the exam. How much Google says I do not bother about certificate, then how are you judging them? If my kids don't have certificates, would they be able to apply to it? No, they won't be. So there the parent comes to a problem. Like, I don't believe in the system. I want my kids to have best child in everything. But now when my kids, they never had to study much. So now when my girl is in grade 6, she's like, why do I need to learn this? And I'm like, but you have to write exam. She's like, why? And I'm like, and that's me and husband says, Beta, finally you have to go to college. For college, mama can't homeschool. So, so the point I feel like, I want to talk to the employers and I wish that if they have a system to judge the kids or to not judge, but okay, you are running a company, you can't employ 100 people. You need to filter out the people. So do the companies have a filtering mechanism where they can, judge the person more than grades, more than the skills, the life skills, the Metaskills are asking about. Can you judge them because companies are again in the bad light? I want good people, but how do I test them? So it starts from there that we can be everything, but finally even a parent who has been like being a rebellious kind of thing, the first one in our family doing it, we both are from very good colleges and everything, but...
By the way, she's from one of the top Indian business schools, and she chose not to work and homeschool. So
yes. Okay, the point is, I am also in that, even being everything, I'm still like, I can't help it, I can't fight the system. I can't go to Google. Howsoever good you are, they will still judge you how many marks you got in grade 10. So sorry, guys, you have to study. So things have to happen from top. Bottom we can do it, but finally, again, we are not the Ambanis who can employ our kids around a company, right? So it has to come from top somewhere. That gives us the confidence that whatever we are doing, we want to give the best for children. We have been through the system. I have been through the system. I know what are good, bad. I had good school life, everything, but now I realize that it could have been better. But I can't do it even with best of money because the system at the top, it needs to accommodate the kids who have learned differently, who have played all their life. They need a source of.
But there is a solution for you. If you look at it, India has become number 3 in startup ecosystem. I work with so many startups. People are from IIM, IIT also. They don't want to work anymore. We go day 0, people still stand in queue. Now they're saying, sorry, I don't want your money. I want you. So the youngsters, though we blame them, they are very rebellious. In that sense, they want to build up. So many startups are getting formed. Maybe that's
No,
the way.
okay, so I'm from Calcutta actually, and there was one guy with us who wanted to do a startup, and we were like, and he was himself 10 years in Infosys, and then he did, and I'm like, you have such clear idea what business he wants to do. He has everything ready, a project plan, and I was looking at the first time because I'm the junior most in the class, and I'm like, why are you here? He said, Surabhi, if I do not have a degree in my resume, I do not get entered the door. This degree will give me the first step. So the people who came to train us, the coaches, all that, he was not interested in any class. He will just wait for those visits and go and tell the project plan, and that's how they got the idea. So no, degree is still required because the people who are sitting at the top are still have that mindset. Oh, you're from IIM, oh, you're from IIM. So, I help other homeschooling families and they tell me, oh, you're from IIM. I said, it doesn't matter now, I said, no, when we say that another IIM one is doing, so people, give us value that it might be something right homeschooling because otherwise homeschooling is crap. So I was like, okay, my degree is useful there, that it is but otherwise, you need a photo. The people sitting at the top have the mindset of degree and that you can't change.
Didi, I think you don't have to worry because your daughters there, they're not studying, they're not really playing, but they are because they are reading books. And through reading a book is some kind of a mind game because you put yourself with empathy into the characters of the book and you live their lives and you practice all kinds of meta-skills by doing humanities basically. So don't worry. Yeah.
No, my worry is not that they would contribute. My worry is more convincing that just keep passing the exam. I'm not asking you to go, just pass it, okay? Because without it, you will not be allowed to enter the door.
I think it's high time
because it's so emotional. You sparked it and left it in the wildfire.
I think it's high time to go back to Nav and hear what Nav's take is on all this, and maybe on the relationship now between the framework that you're building and the concept of play, and now we have the entry of humanities in the story as well.
No, sorry, please. You want to go ahead?
No, go ahead.
I don't have much, but I think the things that kind of I've been making notes, but still there is lots to kind of synthesize in this time. But what I feel is like what Surabhi said and what I think earlier, but I feel like it has to start from culture somehow. Because if the culture doesn't allow, these biases don't allow us to be the way we want to be or way we could be, I think it'll be very difficult. I've seen that difference in Singapore because I travel around. In Singapore, people come to such events or they go to things they want to learn, depending on what will it get me in terms of my job, condo, so on and so forth. So as you said, learning has this economic lean actually, and which is cultural actually. It's related to, it's very vicious actually. I don't know where to hold it actually. It's people, but when I meet people one-to-one, they all are complaining about it. So it's not also people, it's system, I don't know what. So this is one point. Second, I feel what he brought about this filtering as well. So if we have these mechanisms, there could be brave people like you have kids who are homeschooling, or people like you who let your kid do whatever they wanted to do and be creative and express themselves. But if wherever they are being hired or they are being taken for business school, for example, if they choose to do so, this filtering system allows that this person has not done formal PSA and stuff. So I think that the way we I don't know, you're calling it filtering system, but where we measure success, where we assess. The assessments have to change. So culture, assessment has to change. And the third point about play, I think in my framework as well, when I was talking about, I know frameworks are frameworks, but for me, at least they give you a structure to think. It is not for kids to, but it gives you a structure to think. And in that structure, when I said form a habit, that's where you can get that, how you want to do it. You don't have to be super structured. And earlier you said, I think when we were discussing, that there should not be a lot of this about frameworks, but it's about the philosophy of change, the philosophy of learning. So I think these are my very few 3 points about this culture. It has to start with culture. The assessment systems have to change at all levels. And third is about play.
I just want, go ahead.
I have one story. I think we also have to know, you talk about culture. Like my dad is a very retired industrial designer, and one of the stories he told me ages ago resonated. And he said, when I was designing, when we were starting with pen and pencil and drawing board, you would get to a certain point in the work where if you made an error, you had 2 choices. Start all over again, in which case it was quite a major decision, or weave the mistake into what you were doing and move forward. And one of the things that I see in the designers that I work with, and I think it's about the technology, is that you can undo and do 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 forever. And it's not that the judgment, I would also say the tools we use, how do we have the option to weave some constraint into the tools. You only get 3 undos, and after that you have to move forward. It's like a game. So how do we use some of those innate things that you're talking about, but we actually really build them into our technology? Because that really resonates with me. Sometimes when I'm stuck in a problem, I'll be like, no more undo.
It's a real paradox, right? I mean, again, not to diverge this conversation because I'm just looking at Nev at the time. So it's but I think I just want to pick up. No, I just want to pick up that point. It is a real oxymoron or paradox, right? That in a society like Singapore, which unfortunately sometimes we still have the reputation of being very strict and things like that, right? It's supposed that constraint is supposed to actually push you to be most creative, right? Which I think Singapore demonstrated, right? A lot of the nation building examples came from constraints, land constraints. We need building for population. Right now, we are the most successful public housing population. Everybody is coming to Singapore and say, how did you do it? You're solving our own water problem, right? So and so forth, as you know. I think those are learnings. And actually, over the 4 years of the committee, we did actually talk about, and I always, I think Pek Hong, who's a member there, you'll hear me saying, right? I say, imagine if our late Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew were to set up a design school, right? What would be his philosophies, Right, that would be so cool, right, to think about, right? So I just want to sort of echo that. Right? That's one. The other, to respond to also what Nav mentioned, I think I just want to echo that. Whilst we feel helpless to say, hey, in that case, right, what do we do now, right? I mean, we identified this issue. The system is so efficient, right? So well built, right? Where do you put in a spanner and jam it, or at which point can you get in and change it, right? I think it's not so much about changing the system, which I believe actually is that actually the policy stakeholders, actually they are listening. They may not change as fast as we feel, and that's one empathy I got running the committee, thanks to my IHL colleague that brought so much insights into it, right? Is that I think by starting a movement, it's about how do we change the culture, every one of us, right, that is part of this system, right? And it can be done. Let me give you an example, right? And parents who have primary 6 kids, tell me if I'm wrong, right? When PSLE moved from numbers to band, right? Something like that. Parents are still asking, which part of the band are you in? Am I in the lower band or in the upper band? You see, so the government already has provided that, says that, hey, you know what, parents, cool, calm down. We are going to be assessing based on band. If you don't want numbers, we do away with numbers. But the parents still continue. Which part of the band? How come you're the lower part of the band? See, isn't that a cultural issue? So it's got to start. So it doesn't mean that, even if we force and we scream to the policymaker to change the system, right? if we don't change our culture, we'll still revert to the same thing, right? So I think I'm not taking a sort of the organic, approach, which takes a long time, but the system is changing. But I think more importantly, what has to change faster, I'm afraid, is actually our mindset, our culture part of it. And that's why I think that with the attempt to deconstruct the meta skills into something which is that you can literally be able to deliver it, and with the context of what we have been working on in terms of design education, that corrects the basis, and maybe we can together start that movement.
Yeah, I think this change in mindset is okay. It's also related to what success means, actually. Because if this band or that band, that is intrinsically somehow linked to whether my kid will find a better job and with that better life and so on and so forth. So I think those things also have to be addressed somehow. That's where this filtering system and all this, they have to be, that's why it's systemic actually. It cannot be just, we need to bring one personal change, but something has to change as well. I cannot put my hand on that at the moment.
Yeah. But maybe just one final point. Maybe I said final, I don't know how much time we got left, right? But just on the part about, because you mentioned about, let's say, the companies being sort of very demanding, right? And I alluded it in my sharing at the beginning. Actually, the committee through the 4 years, we created a lot more collaboration from the industry and the schools. It's indeed that we feel the industry must have a skin in the game and don't just sit there and demand, right? Give me this specification of graduates. And I think some companies are actually are really doing that. I see Simon there. Kingsman is doing a very good job in really supporting and working with the industry to basically say that, hey, you know what, schools, we know that you can't be training on, you cannot be training the kids on all the capabilities that the industry needs, right? Perhaps some of it should be taken up under the responsibility of the company, right? Meaning that one of the prototypes that we did in the committee is what we call the seamless pathways, right? So instead of a very binary relationship where the graduate today, leave the university, go to the company, immediately they must be ready to use, right? No, sorry, not what we are changing that, right? You need to work on it a bit more before you need to assemble it a bit, instead of a ready-to-use kind of. So we have the companies to have, the industry to have more skin in the game. That's where that seamless pathway comes in, what we call a longer landing strip between the two. So it eases the pressure on both sides, right? But fundamentally, what we encourage the company is that, please stop being so demanding, because it's not good for you as well, right? You must have skin in the game. Whatever the schools are unable to teach, right? Please, industry, do it. The schools has always been pressured to teach entrepreneurship, which I think is a huge challenge, Entrepreneurship don't just come like that, I mean, businessmen who are successful take years and years of, right? So I think the industry friends here would definitely attest to that. So that's another point that we are trying to also change a bit of the relationship from one of transactional to one of having that mutual skin in the game. Yeah.
Yeah, so when we were in Calcutta in the business school, all the subjects keep aside, the only thing we learned actually when the industrial experts came and talked to us what happened in the industry. When the head of a company was doing the cloud, and I'm talking quite a few years back, so we did not know cloud much. And he told the real things that happened. Starting of a case study, he told this problem happened. That was the most learning part of the MBA, apart from anything and everything we studied. So this thing that the industry people, they should go to schools and tell people, kids basically, that you make a point as a couple that tell this happened in the office, or this happened, this happened, and the kids are so interested to know what really happens rather than what happens in the maths book. So they learn much more when someone who is more experienced, whom they value, and they come and tell real life things. That's what we talk about coaching rather than training.
Yeah.
We need more of coaching from the real experiences, because that also binds kids more to be there rather than just mugging up the
Coaching, role modeling is something that we don't do enough, to be very honest, right? We position role models to such high pedestal that only the gurus can be role model, right? No, but role modeling can happen at every level, right? There's so much. I mean, you guys all of us are probably can be role models to many people, right? Coaching, role model, and all these are very good way of, a reframing of learning, instead of every time having to go to a class, formalize it in the form of a kind of set of
But that's what you did. Like that was the great thing that you did between your higher education people and your community, is you've been modeling a different way of being. And I think that's the most brilliant thing of what I heard you say, is that you've created something new and a new framework where you've developed trust to be able to have difficult conversations.
Yeah.
Right? And what you're doing is modeling.
Yeah.
I think time is also up, so this discussion is very engaging. Thank you very much.
Maybe make one.
Of course, Charlie, yes.
That, as a parent, who understand that the future is very disruptive, and trying to prepare my children not for yesterday, some parents do, not for today, but actually for the future. But I also face my own dilemma. I think some of those express that as well. Is that ultimately there's some scarcity, and the scarcity is join the top professions, go to the top schools, join top companies. So there is the excellence part. I think Singapore has done well in terms of generating top students. I don't think that we should shy away from that. I think we should maintain that.
Yep.
But I see the Eastern and Western philosophy of education is that the West is trying to be more rigorous, whereas the East is trying to be more creative. And generally Singapore is on that right path. That we kind of blunt academics, but still emphasize that it's part of the package. But in that process, what happens is that you go from exam focus to, now as a parent, I experience it firsthand, is portfolio building. From very young, right?
Yeah.
And the portfolio building, yeah, the grades part, and the other, sports, CCA, and all these things. So, and if you apply to the top schools, they will look at your portfolio, no longer just your ACADS. And that makes it that, sometimes the well-to-do families will have more resources to help build the portfolio, because all this costs money, and a lot of this outside school, right? So I find that we need to create that space, because right now the kind of it's like in many of the schools now you have home-based learning or outside textbook kind of learning. Those are good, right? And we need to create more of those spaces, but at the same time make it an equalizer. Put in like your Metaskills inside, and it's not examinable. It's actually a learning space. Compared to the other subjects, the ACAD subjects, the tendency is more studying for the grades part of it, which is still important somehow, right? So the key is, how do we create that learning space? Personally, I have two girls, and when they are, I recognize that we need to do things to learn new skills, and you cannot learn it from classrooms. So when they were 6 and 7, I created and let them organize a neighborhood recycling project. So they are going around the neighborhood, marketing that this is going to happen, and just put your recyclables outside. And then on that day, they will organize their other friends and classmates and kind of collect everything, and eventually also collect donations, which is donated to the Pocket Money Fund, which helps other students. So how do we turn that energy of restlessness into positive energy? And they learn in the process as well that I don't think any textbook will be able to teach them. And because the schools doesn't create that, I have to create that. Last year, my company is like trying to organize a team building, right? I asked my two girls to go and organize, and I mean the company won't pay them, so I pay them from my own pocket. But it's their salary, right? And currently they are kind of building a coding school, because obviously coding school can be quite expensive. So they are the instructor and they are the teachers. And I thought if the schools, as an equalizer, create that space, enabling, parents who are more concerned about being future ready, that is the learning space that shouldn't be touched by academics or gradable skills, and then many of your meta skills, you need to be on the ground as a volunteer, maybe as a vacation job, and all these things can be as part of the package, but without that, when you give people free space, and then they will go and continue the rat race, right? So it must be an open space that many of your beautiful meta skills, which I find very important, can be nurtured.
That's the idea of proxy, that you need proxy environment to train in there. And I think what Harriet said earlier as well, like you need to have the space and time to be messy.
Exactly.
So then you're not just like studying, but you are out there and trying things.
But it should be fair for everybody. There's a certain amount of time dedicated to it. It's like something like OBS is one example, right? And I love my girls going to OBS and other things like that.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
So just before we leave, so thank you very much, all of you. I think some people have left, some have stayed, so thank you for staying. I think this is just a starting in a way. This was setting the stage, but if you feel like, is there any topic which, for example, you shared about this creating space in schools? I think we'll be happy to share such topics where we create like smaller groups who would like to discuss this, and we can take these conversations forward under future skills or meta skills. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nev.